New York City, November 6, 1934, 11:47 p.m. Dutch Schultz sat alone in his study on the second floor of his Bronx home. The house was dark except for the single lamp on his desk. His wife and daughter were asleep upstairs. Outside, two of his men stood guard in the cold November night. Inside, Schultz stared at a single piece of paper on his desk. A name, an address, a time, a plan. Thomas E. Dewey, Special Prosecutor, the man who was destroying Dutch Schultz's empire, one indictment at a time. Tomorrow morning at 8:15 a.m., Dewey would leave his apartment building on Fifth Avenue. He always left at 8:15, always took the same route to his office, always walked the same 3 blocks. Predictable, vulnerable, unprotected. Tomorrow morning at 8:15 a.m., a sniper would be waiting on a rooftop across the street. One shot, clean, professional. Thomas Dewey would be dead before he hit the sidewalk. The investigation into Dutch Schultz would collapse. The pressure would ease. The empire would survive. Schultz had the shooter, had the weapon, had the plan. Everything was ready. All he had to do was make one phone call. Give the final order. Tell the shooter to take the shot. 3 words. Green light. Go. But he hadn't made the call yet. And now, sitting alone in his study at nearly midnight, Dutch Schultz was beginning to understand why. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand how Dutch Schultz got to this point. How a Jewish kid from the Bronx named Arthur Flegenheimer became one of the most powerful and most dangerous gangsters in New York. How he built an empire worth millions. And how Special Prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey was systematically destroying everything Schultz had spent 15 years building. Arthur Flegenheimer was born in 1901 in the Bronx. Poor neighborhood, immigrant family. Father was a saloon keeper who abandoned the family when Arthur was 14. His mother worked in a sweatshop. They had nothing. Arthur quit school, started working, loading trucks, running errands, doing whatever paid. But legal work didn't pay enough, not nearly enough. So Arthur started working for the local gang. Running numbers, collecting debts, breaking legs when people didn't pay. He was good at it, ruthless, efficient, terrifying. By the time he was 17, he'd adopted the name Dutch Schultz. It sounded tougher, more intimidating, more like someone you didn't want to cross. When Prohibition started in 1920, Schultz saw his opportunity. Bootlegging, illegal alcohol, speakeasies. The demand was enormous. The profits were staggering, and the competition could be eliminated with violence. Schultz moved fast, built a distribution network, bought off cops, killed rivals. By 1930, he controlled most of the beer distribution in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. He was making over $1 million a year. Untouchable, or so he thought. Then came Thomas E. Dewey. Dewey was everything Schultz wasn't: educated, sophisticated, morally rigid. He'd been a lawyer in private practice before becoming a prosecutor. In 1933, he was appointed Special Prosecutor with one mission: destroy organized crime in New York. He went after the biggest targets, the most powerful gangsters, the men everyone said were untouchable. Dewey started with Waxy Gordon, one of the biggest bootleggers in New York. Everyone said Gordon could never be convicted. Too smart, too careful, too well protected. Dewey convicted him in 1933, 10 years in federal prison. The conviction sent shockwaves through the underworld. If Dewey could get Gordon, he could get anyone. In 1934, Dewey turned his attention to Dutch Schultz. Dewey's investigators dug into everything: Schultz's businesses, his associates, his finances. They interviewed hundreds of people, offered deals to anyone who'd testify, put pressure on Schultz's organization from every angle, slowly, methodically, building a case that would put Schultz away for decades. Schultz tried everything legal first, bribed officials, intimidated witnesses, hired the best lawyers money could buy, moved his operations, changed his routines, became paranoid about surveillance, but nothing worked. Dewey was relentless, incorruptible, fearless. He couldn't be bought, couldn't be scared, couldn't be stopped through normal channels, which left Schultz with one option: kill him. In October 1934, Schultz called a meeting with the commission, the organization Lucky Luciano had created to coordinate organized crime across New York. All the major bosses, Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, Lepke Buchhalter, the men who really ran the city. Schultz made his case. Dewey was a threat to everyone, not just to Schultz, to all of them. If Dewey could take down Schultz, he'd go after the others next. The only solution was to eliminate the threat, kill Dewey, send a message, show prosecutors what happened when they went after the mob. The room went silent when Schultz finished talking. Then Lucky Luciano spoke. You want to kill a prosecutor? A special prosecutor appointed by the governor? Are you insane? Schultz argued his position. Dewey had to be stopped. There was no other way. Luciano shook his head. If we kill a prosecutor, especially someone as high profile as Dewey, the federal government will come down on all of us. They'll send in federal agents, FBI, Treasury. They won't stop until they have arrested every mobster in New York. You think the heat is bad now? Kill Dewey and you'll see what real heat looks like. Meyer Lansky agreed. This is bigger than you, Dutch. Bigger than your legal problems. You kill Dewey, you bring hell down on all of us. The answer is no. Frank Costello nodded. Find another way. Take the charges. Do the time if you have to. But don't kill a prosecutor. That's a line we don't cross. Schultz looked around the room. Every boss agreed. The commission had spoken. The vote was unanimous. No hit on Thomas Dewey. Schultz stood up slowly. His face was red. His hands were shaking with rage. You're all cowards. You're going to let this prosecutor destroy us because you're afraid of consequences. Well, I'm not afraid. And I'm not letting Dewey put me in prison. If you won't authorize the hit, I'll do it myself. He walked out of the meeting. Luciano watched him go, turned to Meyer Lansky. He's going to do it anyway. Lansky nodded. I know. Then we have a problem, Luciano said quietly. Because if Dutch kills Dewey after we told him not to, we can't protect him. The commission will have to take action. Everyone in the room understood what that meant. If Schultz killed Dewey, the commission would kill Schultz. It was that simple. You don't defy the commission. You don't bring federal heat down on the entire organization, and you definitely don't assassinate a high-profile prosecutor after being told not to. But Dutch Schultz didn't care. He went ahead with the plan anyway. He hired a professional shooter, a man named Charlie Workman, one of Murder Incorporated's best. Gave him $20,000, half up front, half after the job. Workman started surveillance on Dewey, learned his patterns, found the perfect spot for the shot, a rooftop with clear line of sight to Dewey's morning walk. Everything was ready. The hit was scheduled for November 7th, 1934. Wednesday morning. 8:15 a.m. Thomas Dewey would be dead before lunchtime, and Dutch Schultz would have eliminated his biggest threat. But that was tomorrow. Tonight was November 6th, and Dutch Schultz was sitting in his study, staring at that piece of paper with Dewey's name on it, trying to figure out why he hadn't made the final phone call yet. At 11:52 p.m., he heard footsteps on the stairs. Small footsteps, soft footsteps. His daughter. Emma Schultz was 8 years old. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's sharp eyes. She appeared in the doorway of the study wearing her nightgown and holding her favorite doll. Daddy, why are you still awake? Schultz quickly covered the paper on his desk with a book, forced a smile. Just working, sweetheart. What are you doing up? I had a bad dream. Can I stay with you for a little bit? Schultz nodded. Come here. Emma walked over, climbed into his lap. Her small body fit perfectly against his chest. She smelled like the lavender soap her mother used. Clean, innocent, pure. Everything her father wasn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma spoke. Daddy, what do you do for work? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean, sweetheart? At school, Miss Thompson asked everyone what their daddies do. Tommy's dad is a doctor. Sarah's dad works at a bank. I didn't know what to say. What do you do? Schultz felt his throat tighten. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that her father is a criminal, that he runs an illegal empire, that he hurts people for money, that tomorrow morning he's planning to have a man murdered? I'm a businessman, Emma. I help people. Emma looked up at him with those sharp eyes. Miss Thompson told us about prosecutors today. She said they're the good people who catch bad men and make sure they go to jail so everyone else can be safe. She said prosecutors are heroes. Schultz's blood went cold. Is that so? Yes, she said there's a special prosecutor in New York right now who's catching lots of bad men. She said he's very brave because bad men want to hurt him, but he keeps working anyway because he knows it's the right thing to do. Schultz couldn't breathe. His daughter was talking about Thomas Dewey, about the man Schultz was planning to kill tomorrow morning. Emma continued, unaware of the impact her words were having. Miss Thompson asked us what we wanted to be when we grow up. Tommy said doctor. Sarah said teacher. I said I want to be like those prosecutors. I want to catch bad men and make people safe. She looked up at her father with absolute trust and innocence. Daddy, do you help catch bad men? Is that what you do? The question hung in the air. 8 simple words from an 8-year-old child. Daddy, do you help catch bad men? Dutch Schultz looked down at his daughter, at her innocent face, at her trusting eyes, at the girl who thought prosecutors were heroes, who wanted to grow up to catch bad men, who had no idea that her father was one of those bad men, who believed her daddy was good, was someone who helped people, was someone she could be proud of. And in that moment, sitting in his study at midnight with his 8-year-old daughter in his lap, Dutch Schultz understood something he'd been avoiding for hours. If he killed Thomas Dewey tomorrow, he would become exactly the kind of man his daughter wanted to stop. The bad man, the criminal, the monster. He would prove that everything the prosecutor stood for was necessary, that men like Dutch Schultz needed to be caught, needed to be stopped, needed to be put in cages so society could be safe. And one day, maybe years from now, Emma would learn the truth, would discover what her father really was, what he really did, would understand that on November 7th, 1934, her daddy murdered a prosecutor who was just trying to make the world safer, and she would hate him, would be ashamed of him, would realize that her childhood hero was actually the villain. Emma was still looking up at him, waiting for an answer to her question. Daddy, do you catch bad men? Schultz's voice cracked when he finally spoke. No, sweetheart, I don't. But maybe I should try to be better. Try to be the kind of man you think I am. Emma smiled, hugged him tight. You're the best daddy in the world. Schultz held her close, felt tears burning in his eyes. Tears he hadn't cried in 20 years. Tears he thought he'd forgotten how to cry. I love you, Emma, more than anything. I love you too, Daddy. They sat like that for 10 minutes. Father and daughter, criminal and innocent, monster and angel. Then Schultz carried Emma back upstairs, tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, watched her fall asleep holding her doll. He went back downstairs to his study, picked up the phone, called Charlie Workman. It's me. The job tomorrow. It's canceled. Workman was silent for a moment. You sure, boss? Everything's ready. I'm sure. Stand down. The hit is off. What about the money? I already got half. Keep it. Consider it payment for your time. But the job doesn't happen. You understand? Yeah, boss, I understand. Schultz hung up, sat back in his chair, looked at the piece of paper with Dewey's name on it, picked it up, walked to the fireplace, threw it into the flames, watched it burn. It was 12:31 a.m. November 7th, 1934, the day Thomas E. Dewey was supposed to die, the day Dutch Schultz decided not to kill him, the day a little girl's question changed everything. But Dutch Schultz's story didn't end there. The commission learned about the planned hit anyway. Someone talked. Someone always talks. Lucky Luciano called another meeting, this time without Schultz present. Dutch was planning to kill Dewey after we told him not to, Luciano said to the assembled bosses. He defied the commission. That can't stand. But he canceled the hit, Frank Costello pointed out. He changed his mind. Doesn't matter, Meyer Lansky said quietly. He made the plan, hired the shooter, got everything ready. The fact that he canceled at the last minute doesn't change what he intended to do. He defied us. He was willing to bring federal heat down on all of us. We can't trust him anymore. Luciano looked around the room. All in favor? Every hand went up. The decision was made. Dutch Schultz had to go. On October 23, 1935, nearly a year after he canceled the hit on Dewey, Dutch Schultz was having dinner at the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey. He was with three of his men. They were discussing business, planning the next week's operations, completely unaware that Murder Incorporated had finally come for him. At 10:15 p.m., two men walked into the restaurant. They weren't there for dinner. Schultz was in the bathroom when the shooting started. He heard the gunfire, came running out. Saw his three men dead or dying, saw the shooters turning their weapons toward him. He tried to draw his gun, too slow. They shot him 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the stomach, once in the shoulder. He collapsed against the wall, slid to the floor, blood pooling around him. The shooters walked out calmly, disappeared into the night. Professional, efficient, final. Schultz was rushed to the hospital. The doctors tried to save him, but the damage was too severe. He lingered for 22 hours, drifting in and out of consciousness, delirious from infection and blood loss, saying strange things, rambling about buried treasure, about boats and numbers, about debts and vengeance. But in his few moments of clarity, he asked for one thing. "My daughter, I want to see Emma." They called his wife, told her Dutch was dying. She brought Emma to the hospital. The little girl was 9 now, old enough to understand what death meant, old enough to be terrified. She stood in the doorway of her father's hospital room, saw him lying in the bed, tubes and bandages, pale and weak, dying. "Daddy?" Schultz opened his eyes, saw his daughter, managed a weak smile. "Hey, sweetheart." Emma ran to his bedside, grabbed his hand. "Daddy, what happened? Who hurt you?" "Bad men, Emma. Very bad men. But I thought you said you were a businessman. I thought you helped people." Schultz's eyes filled with tears. This was the moment he'd been dreading, the moment his daughter learned the truth. "I lied, sweetheart. I'm sorry. I'm not a good man. I'm one of the bad men you wanted to catch when you grew up. I hurt people. I stole. I did terrible things." Emma was crying now. "No. You're good. You're my daddy. You're good. I tried to be good, Emma. I really did. Last year, I almost did something very bad. But then you asked me a question. You asked if I caught bad men. And I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that monster. Not when you believed I was good. So I stopped. I changed my mind. But it was too late. The people I worked with didn't forgive me for the things I'd done. They sent bad men to hurt me, and now I'm dying." Emma sobbed. "Don't die, Daddy. Please don't die." Schultz squeezed her hand weakly. "Listen to me, sweetheart. You be good. You stay in school. You become that prosecutor you wanted to be. You catch bad men, real bad men, men like I was. You make the world better. You be everything I wasn't. Promise me." "I promise, Daddy." "I love you, Emma. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you thought I was. I'm sorry I'm not the daddy you deserved." "I love you too, Daddy." Dutch Schultz died at 8:35 p.m. on October 24, 1935. He was 33 years old. He'd spent his entire adult life building a criminal empire. He'd killed, stolen, corrupted, destroyed. But in the end, the thing he remembered most was a conversation with his 8-year-old daughter, a conversation that stopped him from killing a prosecutor, a conversation that showed him what he'd become, a conversation that came too late to save him, but just in time to save whatever tiny piece of humanity he had left. Thomas E. Dewey never knew how close he came to death on November 7, 1934. Never knew about the sniper on the rooftop, never knew about the canceled hit. He continued his work, continued prosecuting criminals, eventually became governor of New York, ran for president twice, lived a long, successful life, died peacefully in 1971 at age 68. Emma Schultz grew up. She changed her last name, distanced herself from her father's legacy. She never became a prosecutor. The revelation of what her father really was had shattered that dream. But she did become a social worker, spent her life helping children from broken homes, kids whose parents were criminals, kids who needed someone to believe in them, to show them they could be better than their parents were, to prove that you're not defined by where you come from, but by the choices you make. She never spoke publicly about her father, never gave interviews, never wrote a memoir, but according to her children, she kept one thing from her childhood, a small piece of paper, yellowed with age, folded carefully, kept in a box in her closet. On the paper in her child's handwriting from 1934 were 8 words, "When I grow up, I want to catch bad men." And beneath it, in her adult handwriting, added decades later, "Daddy tried to be good, just for a moment, because I believed he was." That's the story of November 6, 1934, the night Dutch Schultz sat in his study planning a murder. The night his 8-year-old daughter asked him a simple question. The night a criminal decided not to kill a prosecutor because he couldn't bear disappointing his child. The night that saved Thomas Dewey's life and cost Dutch Schultz his own. One question, 8 words. "Daddy, do you help catch bad men?" The answer was no. Dutch Schultz didn't catch bad men. He was a bad man. But for one night, because his daughter believed in him, he tried to be better. He canceled a murder. He chose his daughter's innocence over his own survival. He made the one good decision in a lifetime of terrible ones. It didn't save him. The commission had already decided his fate, but it saved Thomas Dewey, and it gave Emma something to hold on to. The knowledge that her father, in his final year, had done one decent thing, had chosen love over violence, had tried to be the man she thought he was. Sometimes that's all we get, one good choice in a sea of bad ones, one moment of humanity in a lifetime of cruelty, one question from a child that changes everything, even if the change comes too late to matter. November 6, 1934, the night Dutch Schultz proved that even monsters can love their children, even killers can have moments of conscience, even criminals can make the right choice, for the wrong reasons, at exactly the wrong time. The night 8 words stopped a murder. "Daddy, do you help catch bad men?"